relate throughout all these encounters and through the site where we have left so many materials, videos, many communicational pieces, campaigns. We have been full of life during these 3 days, and it is the greatest gift to which we could aspire, life itself. I think that we have worked hardly in this Congress, which has been the expression of links, of many links that already exist and that are giving their fruits and their results, establishing also new links, new relationships, knowing each other with others, and also valuing our experiences, our interchanges, what had a level which I congratulate because they have been events of a high level. And each one has tried to give its his or her best. This has given us a lot of new proposals, new possibilities in this horizon of a day of a warranty of the right, human right for education to everybody during all life, throughout all life in our region, Latin America and the Caribbean, and a contribution for all the planet. So very much welcome. Closing our Congress with so many great people in these closing remarks, and knowing all the people that is knowing us throughout all the nets and the extreme virtuality in which we are for this Congress to arrive to as maximum people as possible. Thank you, Marce. I can give the floor directly if you want to Alejandra Soya, Director of CES Foundation. Alejandra, please, the floor is yours. Thank you, Nelsie. It has been, I have enjoyed, and we all go to different things after these 3 days in which we have shared and made community of learning, many learnings. And I say, as you said, this is a gift. I would highlight also these 3 days as the commitment and the generosity that we have felt, the commitment and the generosity that we have had sharing all these experiences, the new experiences and the old one. There is an information I can pass you from the communication team of the foundation in an asynchronical way with the new technologies. We have been working during these days with more than 200 or 300, 2,300 people asynchronically, but have accompanied us the 38 spaces in which we have worked. It's not little, and I want to share with you that thanks to the website of the Congress and the platforms where you can get in, many people will go on looking each one of the moments. So I give you the congratulations for all of this. The second thing that I want to mention, I'm sorry, even if everybody has a lot of value, but I want to congratulate the team, the CES team, especially Marcela. I don't see you the far, Marcela, because you have done a work, incredible work, meeting all this process of 1 year that I think has an enormous value for what we have achieved in these days. And to collect brings to new moments, and I will just underline 3 or 4 things that are very strong for me. First, I want to thank to 2 other people. I want to thank the team of the communications team of CES Foundation that has worked a lot in order to make all this possible, and the teams of the foundation that also participated, but especially the UNCI, Cierre, in your name, to all the institution, because you have accompanied us with a marvelous quality of attention, service. So thank you so much. I wanted to underline a little amount of things, 2 or 3 things that I learned during these days. The first one is that I was very much surprised and also proud of this idea of being able to give importance to the themes that have to do with fiscal justice and all these things of the progressive justice that we merit, accept the educational budget in our countries. This interrelationship opens a new way that we have to go through and work it. The second theme is the importance of thinking again the high school, a different high school, an emancipatory high school, in which our adolescents can find their own critical thought. And the third point that has to do with this is the territorial, the roots, the territory, the ground where all this has interrelationship with the school, and look towards the global issue. The transition between the school and the jobs and the work, the new technologies as connectivity, as a right. Today, this hybrid situation crosses all of us, and we need to give it the importance it has. And finally, there was a lot of things more, but in order not to take too much time, I wish, I would love that in the next years, we could be considered as the region, not the poorest region, not the poorest, but the most unequal region of the planet. That's how we are today, and on what it depends, this inequality, to go out of it. It depends of the capacity that we have of looking in another way, accepting that there are other rules of the game, that we cannot leave anyone behind. And this is not just something that has to do with the rights. We cannot allow us to leave anyone excluded or behind. Let's look with other regard, with another way. And for that, it is not needed to more than to have good government, public policies, and solid and strong governments that will be able to have a project for the country that guarantee in one way the right for education, that is a fundamental right of the human rights. To bring up the voice of the young people that had a lot of experiences sharing with us during all these days, and was a pleasure to hear to them. The tremendous were present. These girls are from Chile, the tremendous. And they said, we really need to be recognized as the ones that make the present. to the ones that build the present. And we will not allow that they give us responsibility and leave us alone to, carry on those things that the adults that are here had not been able to carry on, and to produce the profound changes in relation with the inequalities of our region. Yes, the young people are the present. The adolescents are the present. And it is with them, with their active participation, not only in information, but taking decisions, with whom we need to generate a good methodology and methods of work, not only to include them in information, but also in the decision taking. So let's go forward with this great dialogue that we will have as closing remarks, and thanks for all these days that we have shared. Thank you, Alejandra. And now we will go to our first round, where all the ones needed to be present. We have the technology to cross all the different gates. So Rosario Garavito, directors of the Millennium Movement, she's from Peru and is in charge of the moderation with a great experience. She will coordinate this moment of the first round dedicated to the right to education, child and adolescent policies. Hi, Rosario. Hello. The floor is yours. Good morning, Marcela, and good morning to everybody that is connected now in the today. Thank you to all the panelists and to the technical team and the people that are seeing us from the different countries. It's a regional space, it's an ample space. So we want to thank you for having the time to accompanying us in this Congress of Experiences in Education, and now have the chance to meet in this session of closing remarks. For this session, we will develop the theme in this first round of the right to education and policies for child and adolescent. During the Congress, we developed several contributions. Some points to highlight have been the importance of connectivity in a world that is each time more connected in the context of pandemic, with the importance of assuring connectivity as a right for the different instances of child and adolescence. The crisis of education has affected in a more intense way all those groups that didn't have necessarily the access or the logistics to be able to connect with this digital world, with which we have tried to continue with different spaces, among which is the educational space. As it was mentioned before, the importance of the educational ambit
diferentes espacios,
with different spaces, diverse intercultural spaces, assuring the rights for the youth, with these points that we have highlighted during the different sessions of this Congress. Today we have two invited, very special, that will comment us of the policies dedicated to childhood in relation with the right to education. In the first place, Claudia Bracchi, Undersecretary of Education of the province of Buenos Aires, Argentina, and Cora Steinberg, she's from UNICEF Argentina Education Specialist, and Marta Alessandra Agudelo Ruiz, she's Medellin Secretary of Education. Welcome to this space. And I will start with the question of the recommendation of the policies you have for these recommendations for education. Can you please have the floor? And we will start with Claudia Bracchi. Claudia, you're very much welcome. Thank you for the welcome. I am not Claudia Bracchi, I'm Claudia Bello. Claudia has problems of connectivity, and I would like to share with you some of the measures that have been taken from the Undersecretary of Education of the province of Buenos Aires, assuring the right for education in this pandemic time that we are through it. In the third month, we had to make a shift on our ways of working, and COVID was installed, suspending many social processes. Our first preoccupation was based on guaranteeing the continuity of the teachings to our students with all the educational system. Some of the pedagogical actions of emergency that I would like to highlight in this context of isolation was a program of pedagogical continuity for students so that they could continue with the study from their houses, being accompanied by their teachers. I want to mention some of the actions developed. We started with the building of notebooks for this pedagogical continuity for the students so that the families and the people that accompany them could help them with this pedagogical material that was uploaded in a portal of the province of Buenos Aires. And we created a new portal that was called Let's Continue Studying. Until now, we have more than 1,500 different pedagogical contents. That portal does not consume mobile data. I mean, these materials are distributed to schools where there was no paper in format, so the students could go on with their task. And in a parallel, there was a space of virtual space for the bicentenary classrooms. Another action was to distribute cellular phones in those complex areas and use some netbooks also for the students. So for the families that didn't have access, also for teachers that didn't have computers, so that they could continue with the process of teaching from their houses. In the province of Buenos Aires, we had to adequate ourselves to adapt to the technology processes because we didn't have the program of connecting with equality. So a second action that warranted the right for education was the implementation of the program. We take care of all of us, and we take care of those ones that take care of us. We have technical teams for the schools, and those teams working in networks in the communities. We build a new team for the emergency, trying to accompany in situations provoked by the situation of isolation. Another one of the measures was to work with the priorities of the curricula, giving the first priority to the most significant themes in the social area, so that we place what couldn't be avoided by the students. And another action that accompanied this curricula was to design the new strategy of evaluation. To evaluate during the pandemic was for us a challenge, that these modalities, without the presence of the scholar and classroom presentiality, was very new for us. So the pedagogical evaluation uh, uh, bring us to look at the process, the register of all the educational trajectory, that look at the process of learning from 2020 to 2021, and the evaluation was not during the normal period, but was amplified to a period of 2 years in order to close these 2 years looking at the process of the students in 3 stages, with advanced processes of evaluation so that the students could finish their task assigned, the ones in process where there was some interruptions given by connectivity or the difficulty to access to the materials, and the ones that didn't have continuity, that put the students which had to interrupt their studies during the pandemic, and there we needed to intensify the teachings. So we designed a special program of support of these processes within the end of the year 2020, and we call it accompanying the relink of the trajectories, with an accompanying process that had to do with visiting the students in their houses and looking for them where they were, the students. We did the link in order to put the students and their families link again with the schools, and a reduced number of students that couldn't be connected were referred to the portal ABC, where they can follow up their studies. The students were reported to an encounter space so that they little by little could advance in their studies, getting back to them. And another program was the Forte program that allowed the students to have the space of intensification. That means that in high school, those students that didn't have all their classes finished were supported with more hours for their lessons and finish them in an adequate format. When we were able to open a little bit the schools, for us was very interesting, the experience of the open school, because even if there was no presentiality, the fact that the school was open created a greater link, the community's approaches, and since the province of Buenos Aires gives, through the Minister of Development, some food also to the students, was an opportunity for the teachers to be present and give those food to the students that, not having connectivity, could bring their task and talk a little with their teachers and have protection from the school. So in this dynamics of the open school, give back the sense of the school within the community, not only because of the food, but as an educational experience and an interchange of materials and evaluation and a dialogue. We offer also the students digital options, notebooks that they could took to their houses and download the materials they needed, some economical funding for the schools so that they could give printed material to the teachers and the students, and some materials related to different organizational models. First, there were some students that were linked better, but then we had to prepare all the institutions and have some measurements of alcohol or carbon or whatever in order to assure the return in health conditions, appropriate health conditions. Now that we are out of it, it looks for us quite normal, but at the beginning, all these protocols were very new. Presently, I have to close. I have a lot of things to still describe, but I know I have little time. To be able to go back to presentiality, we have to take care of the students and their families, and now we are developing new programs in order to link with the less loss as possible of students and of content. And these political and pedagogical decisions have helped us in order to carry on the educational process, even if we have a lot of challenges still ahead. Thank you so much.
Rosario, no sé si tiene problemas de conexión, Rosario, porque la veo.
I think Rosario has connectivity problems.
Entonces,
Gracias, Claudia.
Thank you, Claudia.
Hola, ¿me escuchan ahora?
Do you hear me?
sí, Rosario.
Hola, muchísimas gracias.
Thank
No
you.
sé si me escuchan bien.
Do you hear me well? Yes.
Muchísimas gracias y bueno, son
Thank
también
you.
parte de los desafíos que
This
enfrentamos.
is part of the challenges that we have in connectivity, as we were mentioning.
Muchísimas gracias, Claudia, por compartirnos.
Thank you, Claudia, for sharing this experience. It's incredible all the work you have done and all the materials that you have given to us in the province of Buenos Aires in front of this sanitary crisis, but a social crisis, an educational, political, economical crisis that we're going through in many countries of the region of Latin America and the Caribbean. Now we go to the next intervention, Cora Steinberg. She's a specialist of education from UNICEF in Argentina. Can you please take the floor, Cora, and tell us about the recommendation of UNICEF for childhood, adolescent, and youth in the region? Welcome. Thank you, Rosario, for the presentation. I thank the invitation and celebrate this great Congress, a dialogue that is very needed in this time, and that arrives in an opportune moment to think what is coming and imagine again the future. There is an urgency to do it, to make it in the perspective of rights. Pandemic had a strong impact in our society, especially the household with adolescents. And I want to reflect, celebrating some points that the emergency clarified, according the importance to be in a plurality and a perspective of right, the future that is coming in the educational sector. The first comment is what Claudia said, the emergency that had to be faced on March 2020, a very incredible situation in all the regions of the world that oblige the educational systems to think again and review all the practices from the technical management to the institutional management and to the life itself in each one of the families that was obliged to change all the way of living and start a confinement that was for the first time in all the world for youth, child, and adults. Now that we look backwards, we hear that a lot of critical voices, but accompanying from the first hand, all the ones that had the responsibility of taking decisions know that there was a very complex moment in order to assure the health to everybody. So the conditions were absolutely adverse and complex. I want to highlight what happened in many countries of Latin America, which was these policies with multimedia strategies, with different alternatives, using different technologies, the virtuality, but also to go back to most traditional technologies as the use of television and radio and some printed materials in context for connectivity and integration of technologies was very hard. Argentina, as many of you know, was before the pandemic and after the pandemic very unequal in terms of access to the different appliances, to the different technologies, and that bring us to the need of dimension this problem, and many of the one from two households didn't have the proper technology in Argentina in order to follow for the kids all the educational programs. So these strategies were fundamental, and from the national evaluation of the pedagogical continuity done on the last year, we identify that the child and adolescents that didn't have these technologies had a greater impact. And they are the ones that had to interrupt their scholar or have a very not continuous education, and these strategies were fundamental. The strategies that the national government had taken, and many provinces also, accompanying the schools and the schools to the family and the family to the kids. And from the cooperation, we contributed together with other organizations of like UNESCO, for instance, accompanying the decision making and all the commissions that created these protocols that prioritize the way to come back essentially to the classes during pandemic. We supported in February of this year the building of the observatory to go back to the classes in a presential way. An instrument that has been very important in our country to follow up the commitments that all the ministers have taken. And on the other hand, we accompany the evidence for policymakers and the decision taken regarding the impact of pandemia in the kids throughout the household. And we allow to highlight the impact of the continuity and also the emotional dimension of education, which is part of an agenda that has to be part of to allow the well-being of all the kids in order to advance in the processes, having a very strong impact, especially in the smaller kids, in the way they get the food and sleep and have the rest hours, and the bigger ones in adolescents, we identify a very important percentage that were situation of depression and anguish aspects that have to do in their possibilities of learning and scholarity and access to the learnings and abilities that the school promotes. These are very important issues and the social problems that we had in many countries of the region, having different possibilities and vulnerability to sustain their scholarity and participating in the using their right for education. Finally, I want to comment another initiative that we pushed together with 40 organizations of different sectors of society that were working together with the government of, at a national and regional level, trying to resolve the difficulties, and this was done with an alliance of unique generation, and we are happy to know that we can contribute in this agenda of connectivity, identifying new models of alternative connectivity in the context of different difficult access. We know that there is a difficult agenda, and in the communities, the connectivity of the traditional models have limits also, are not able to go to all the contexts. So the next week we will present two models that have been very strong in the province of Neuquén and La Rioja, giving solutions to more than 3,000 organizations that didn't have any connectivity at all. And with this project, we want also to give importance to fortifying the systems of information, giving systems of information a name, because in many provinces we have this system, but in other ones we don't. And from unique generation, we give a contribution for the Secretary of Education will give the technological equipment and infrastructure needed in order to achieve this advancement at the national level, fortifying the technical equipment, the technical teams for the production of information accompanying these policies that from the last year had resources to accompany the kids that had left the school or had had a scholarship with a lot of accidents during the summer and helping them to come back to school during this year and allowing us to have 70% of the high school in many of the provinces of the schools. So we have an advancement and we will celebrate this and we will continue to support. So I wanted to share these ideas and celebrate the big work that all the educational system has done in these emergency times and the families that have accompanied all this process, protecting the kids so that they can continue. But we have a lot of obstacles and we have to go through all these learnings, using all these tools to favor these different processes, putting in march some policies that can respond to the different territories and continue with three final ideas. It is essential to sustain the financing of education so that the policies can be sustained with different strategies of equality, prioritizing the kids of the most vulnerable context. In Argentina, 6 from 10 kids are living households that are placed under the line of poverty. So we have to close these inequality gaps, assuring to put the learnings of the kids at the first place, accompanying the task of the teachers in this path, and achieving some consensus in order to take decisions that should be participative and integrate the looks of all the actors, all the family, and all the students. Thank you so much.
Gracias, Cora.
Thank
Rosario
you, Cora.
está con problemas de
Rosario has
conectividad.
problems
No
of
sé si
connectivity,
está conectada en este minuto.
so I don't think
Muchísimas
she's
gracias
connected
por el
now.
panorama tan
Thank you, Cora,
exhaustivo respecto
for
a las
this
actividades
huge
y
panorama that you
analizo
have
poner en
given
valor
us,
también todo lo que se
putting in value all what we have built,
en este momento de
all what
innovación,
we have had as innovation
esta
in this
innovación
moment,
forzada, como algunas
this forced
decimos, todo lo puesto
innovation,
en el
as
tapete.
many people
Y
say.
ahora entonces
And
vamos
now,
a dar,
with
para
the
porque
floor,
podamos pasar al último,
we need to
al
pass to
siguiente
the
bloque, vamos a dar
second
la palabra
round.
al doctor
We will give the
Rosso,
floor
que
to
está
Dr. Gianni
en
Rosso,
representación de la
that
señora Marta
that is in representation
de la
of
Secretaría de Educación de
Mrs.
Medellín.
Marta Agudelo Ruiz from Medellin, Secretary of Education. Gianni, if you could please reassume your presentation and use your last 2 minutes so that we can pass to the next panel where you also will be present and you will be able to speak not only about infancy, childhood, and adolescent, but also to count with you. Thank you, Marcela. Thank you for the event that during these days has been so rich, and to have the experience that we have had from different colleagues and entities and cities. As you said, we can talk more in the next panel, but I want to tell you that Medellin was not the exception. We had a difficult situation, but was the only city in Colombia that in a 99% of the students are back in the schools. All our schools have connectivity, all our schools have technological apparatuses, and in the moment in which we had the contingency to see the technological issues, we had more than 60,000 students of the 300,000 students at all didn't have connectivity or didn't have their apparatuses. So this was an inconvenience for transmitting the classes, which was needed to put some strategies for the smaller ones until the students from high school, and we pay attention through printed material in a physical way with using our TV channel at a local level and using some programs that allow us connectivity through the educational platforms. It was difficult, but as it is this city, we were resilient and we were able to be the only city in all Colombia to have 99% of the students back in their classrooms. And this was because we have the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure that we have learned to do it.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Thank you, Gianni, for your words. And now we go directly to the second round. We thank Cora, Claudia, to you, Claudia Brach from the province of Buenos Aires, Rosario from the youth representative. And now we give the floor to Teresa Casalá from Other Voices from Neuquén, in the name of Red Encuentro from Argentina, who will accompany as moderator to this second round. And we ask to be very careful with the time. It's a way to express solidarity. with the ones that are talking here. So please, Teresa Carabá, we convoke to Silvia Becerra and Helen Dow. Helen, is your moment.
Teresa Casalá, por favor.
Teresa Casalá, please, as moderator. Good afternoon. Thank you, Marcela, and thanks to all the team that have been present in this Congress of Experiences that is so great. I have the honor to moderate this panel to the right to education throughout life, convinced of the transforming character and emancipatory character of this education for a citizenship informed and committed with the global problems. These 3 days we have here and share many challenges and difficulties, some that we can name in order to remember during these encounters are the access, the permanence, and the effective return to classrooms, to the educational system, the quality of education, the work situation of the teachers that work with EPJA, and the big inequalities that have been stated in the different panels: connectivity, technology, digital alphabetization that was highlighted with the pandemic of COVID-19, and of course the funding and financing or the non-financing of education. So we have all these lines of action that are so important. I just name it, but now we want to introduce the 3 panelists that will talk about this, about the way of offering the education, amplifying the offering, amplifying the gender and diversity, discrimination that we have noticed among women and adults, persons with a disability, and the recognition of formal and non-formal education, all the organizations that generate these possibilities, and to fortify these conditions of teachings, learning, and so many things that have appeared, and we go forward working together, and that is why we give the floor Gianni Rosso, talking from Medellin, and now we give the floor to this right to education throughout life. Which are the experiences and how you are seeing? We have just 7 minutes for each panelist, so we will use it. Thank you, Gianni. It's your moment. Thank you, Teresa. And here I am meeting Samara Sanchez, that has been a very good ally of our process, a partner of our process in Colombia. And I want to use my time saying that for us, the technical high school, it finishes with the high school and give us the possibility of fortifying such education in those last grades of the secondary school, on the high school, and give us the possibility that our students continue and do not leave the school, as usually happens in the academic modality, and also have the possibility to insert themselves from the beginning in their jobs and in the market of the jobs. Given that this technical high school supply the university and articulate with the superior education And this is a very good strategy that has given us very good results. Of course, we have to better this process, but it has given good results to us thanks to a very important thing, which is the work in nets, the work in community, and the commitment of what we have called the state, for one hand, the educational sector, the business sector, and the civil society. In those four axes, we have supported all the contingencies, and we have supported the way to go forward in the process of formation in the technical aspect. Also in the basic school, elementary school, and continuing in the superior education in high school. I want to recommend this as an action that may be difficult in other contexts. For us was not easy, but we already went through, and we can fortify it each time more. And so the school and the educational system, the state, from all these organizations and institutions, and the civil society have to be protagonists in all these public policies with a good success. I don't know if I have time to say a couple of more things, but I wanted to highlight this and thank you and recommend a next encounter to make it presentially, and we offer our city of Medellin and our team of the Secretary of Education and with the partners that we have here. All of them would be very pleased to receive you here. And I leave the scenario with this invitation and this disposition, and I will suggest to continue the work in community and in net in order to fortify our region. Thank you so much for the use of your time, and Tamara for your silent presence accompanying this project. And at the beginning, I heard also that we have this strong proposal of these four axes, the important work of the state, education, business sector, and the civil society, and the work of commitment and work on net, how this has been appearing as something that we can articulate to go all together, affecting, using the real right for education. I am not the one that has to take the decision if to go or not to Medellin, but of course, Nelsie and others are hearing, and we would be very happy to share presentially way a new encounter with experiences. And thanks so much to the team of Medellin. And we will give the floor to Silvia Becerra. She is from the educator of Guadacachi, a net of educators. We will hear from another look what Silvia has to contribute with a lot of hope and experience.
Gracias. Gracias, Teresa.
Thank you, Teresa.
No sé si me escuchan, Teresa.
Do you hear me?
Perfecto, Silvia, perfecto.
Perfect,
Bueno,
perfect.
Buenos días. Yo participo
Good morning. I am participating and taking the floor in the name of the teachers of young and adults with the Association of Guanacache that is in Mendoza, Argentina. The invitation was to talk about the right throughout life of education, throughout life. And I want to comment that in the name of Guanacache
conjunto de lagunas
is referred to a
dos
set of
Argentina.
little lakes
Ese
that
grupo
are
de
at the
lagunas
name of
representó los
in
más
the north of
vulnerables,
Argentina,
los
where
perseguidores
the
de
indigenous
derechos
peoples refugees when the
Guanacache fue
Spaniards
un lugar
came.
para crecer,
So this is a place to grow, to develop. It's a secure place, an oasis in the middle of the desert. We name our organization Guanacache as a cultural space, a multicultural space to grow, to develop, to defend ourselves, defending the right to education and to teach from this point of change that is COVID, the pandemic. As many of you have said, place the teachers in front of an enormous challenge to become creative in this situation, to learn from this situation, to sustain. That to learn is a way very human to be in the world and to manifest our hope to transform our lives and the way we live in. When we thought as a society about this right to learn throughout life, we surpass the fight of learning only as a child or adolescent. We are manifesting this need, proper individually and collective, of sustaining the possibility of transformation and to transform the world that we share. No? Popular education in this sense has provided us with valuable experiences that have an intention in this respect. In the educational formal field, the education throughout life is an institutional space where the structure, where it is structured, the possibility of having the right for education, that for different reasons, maybe they didn't have it. It is not a chance that these sectors, the national law of education understands rights, human rights, establishes that young and adult education is a modality that contributes to an emancipatory education, an exercise of citizenship, and gives the possibility of superior study and the inclusion of young and adults in the labor world. This exercise of the citizen rights gives everybody the right to knowledge, developing a critical way of thinking, and form parts of the society in which we are in. All these possibilities can be developed if we develop also policies to fortify the public education, with the design of curricula, evoke not only the right to education and learning, but the capacity of exercising autonomy in the public policy of the temporary learning, the relationship among the subject and the context, developing capacities and the problems, institutions that recognize the subject as the ones that have knowledge, and also to consider in the present situation, presentiality as a particular need of the popular sectors. At the same time, We need to guarantee connectivity and accessibility, not only in the schools, but also for each student and teacher in their personal spaces. Giving spaces and time for teachers and to think and pay attention to the transformation of digitality as a whole that mobilizes not only forms of producing and circulating and consuming culture, but also ways of knowledge and to be in the world. From our perspective, we see with preoccupation the way of government that reproduce this marginality in the modes that they already have. So the level of education is seen as money that is not well used. And so in this sense, it seems that they have to lower the intervention of the state, and we, on the contrary, think that we have to thought on the state as a state of this from the civil society in order to achieve better conditions at a material and symbolic ambit for everybody in our country. In order to finish, I want to say that this process, this political, historical process, to have the right to education throughout life is not done in a naive way or neutral way or comfortable way, or we wait for others to do it, but on the contrary, we take the commitment and job and work of doing it. So it's an ethical and political attitude. Thank you so much. Silvia, the name of the organization is so important, with the oasis in the middle of the desert is so important. Beautiful and very, give us a lot of hope. And it's good to have this morality and prioritize it with politicals that will fortify the public education. And it's so important to know that there are these oases in our country and in several places in the world, taking the risk for young and adults education. Thank you to all. Now we give the floor from someone that comes from another part of the world, Elena Wu from Asbae, Annette from Asia. Ellen will speak in English, so she will have a simultaneous translation, and we will enjoy her proposal and examples.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've been listening. I've been inspired in the earlier intervention, earlier input. I'm really very impressed. It's always inspiring to be in this enriching space with our friends in Latin America and the Caribbean region. So my huge congratulations to our friends in CLADE, in OMEP, in SIAL, so many organizers here, and thank you for this opportunity to join you. As I was listening to the earlier speakers, I've been thinking, what else do I say? Because it's whatever they've been saying is what I actually want to share also from our region in the Asia Pacific. Earlier I've heard about the broader context. Someone summarized the broader context, and there's a lot of the broader context that also are similar to us in the Asia Pacific region, where we think that the current period will be significantly shaped and defined by the lasting impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, that it will continue to have that character of having deeper and structural inequalities in society. We also see the massive acceleration of technology amidst wide digital divides. So many of the speakers have highlighted that. We also recognize as one of the contexts and challenges that we as education activists need to respond to are the threats posed by the climate change now and in the future. So it's not climate change, it's not only for the future, but also now. And at the same time, in our region, like in some of the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, we are also seeing the ever-present geopolitical challenges and threats to human rights and democratic systems, no? In a number of countries in our region, in the Asia Pacific. And many of the threats to human rights and democratic systems in Asia Pacific are fueled by conflicts, populism, fundamentalism, and polarization. With all this context that impact on our work, on the right to education and lifelong learning, we need to really fully account to this interconnected context to be able for us as education activists, as civil society organizations, and education advocates to respond to these ongoing challenges. We know that the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated, has worsened existing challenges, especially in meeting the right to education and lifelong learning obligations of governments, and in particular, in their capacity to meet the SDGs and SDG 4 commitments. What we have seen is that so much of the gains, so much of the developments and achievements made in the right to education and lifelong learning, and even within the targets in SDG 4, so much of these gains are under threat because of the setback and pressures brought about by the COVID-19 pandemic. What we are also seeing in the region and also at the global level, because ASBIG, the Global Campaign for Education, CLADE, OMEP, and other regional organizations that are also engaging at the global education policy processes, there is a tendency of governments to use the COVID-19 pandemic to regress and to narrow their ambition for the right to education and lifelong learning, and to narrow their ambition for SDG 4. They make it as an excuse, there's little resources, therefore we need to prioritize, we only need to select some themes. So that for us as education activists are very, very worrying. We need to respond to that. We cannot divide the right to education and lifelong learning